This is my husband, Raul Adamchak, talking to his students at the UC Davis organic farm. He's been an organic farmer for about 35 years now. So you may think that a geneticist and an organic farmer represent polar opposites of the agricultural industry. Some people think we don't even talk to each other, but we do, and it's really not that difficult because we have the same goal, which is an ecologically based agricultural system. Still, over the years, many of our friends, family, and colleagues have asked us, are genetically engineered crops safe to eat and safe for the environment? So we wrote this book in response to those questions. And what we try to do in the book is to provide readers with a better understanding of what organic farmers actually do and what geneticists do. And we also try to distinguish between fact and fiction on the debate on crop genetic engineering. Now, Raul and I believe that discussions on food and farming really must take place in the context of the economic, social, and environmental impacts of agriculture. These are the three pillars of sustainable agriculture. And when we consider sustainable agriculture, a really big part of this is preventing environmental degradation. So that includes conserving land and water, reducing harmful inputs, fostering soil fertility. So these challenges are really among the greatest of our time. How can we feed the growing population without further destroying the environment? We face looming food shortages. It's estimated that by 2050, the world population will reach 9 to 10 billion people. This is equivalent to adding the population of 2 Chinas to Earth. We can't simply grow more food by plowing more land because most of the arable land has already been farmed. Farmers are already turning to very marginal lands and also very precious native ecosystems to grow more food. And this is an example in Peru of a very steep hillside that's being farmed. And my husband, a Central Valley farmer, can't even imagine this is possible. 70% of the world's water is already used for agriculture, and the demand is increasing dramatically. This means we need to produce more food by using the same amount of land and less water. Now, pests and disease also can devastate crops. This is a four-day time lapse of a blight that's infecting this crop. And these can have terrible consequences. So consider the Irish potato famine that destroyed the livelihood of farmers 150 years ago, with 1 million people starved and 1 million more emigrated, many to the United States, and changed the course of history. Obama's great-grandfather fled the potato famine to the U.S. So there are pesticides that can control some of these diseases, but many of these are toxic, and often in less developed countries especially, they're not used safely. So here's an example of a farmer in Peru that's smiling for the camera. He doesn't have any gloves. He doesn't have a mask. The World Health Organization estimates that 300,000 people die every year because of pesticide poisonings. Now, compounding the challenges of food production are the predicted effects of climate change. It's expected that we will have worsening droughts, but we're also going to have increasing floods. So climate change is taking water where we need it and putting it to places we don't, such as in Bangladesh, where we've seen flooding every year for the past 4 years. Now, in Bangladesh, 2/3 of the diet is rice. And although rice likes to grow in water, if it's completely submerged, most rice varieties will die within 3 days. So these boys are walking through their fields. This was taken a couple of years ago, and this rice is not going to come back. So this has a large impact on the livelihood of people, many who live on less than $1 a day. Now, so how can plant genetics help? So, of course, global food issues are very challenging. There's many approaches that we need to take. It's helpful to reduce meat consumption, although meat consumption is increasing in many parts of the world. I encourage everybody to eat invasive species. I think we'll do that right away when we get home. So this is a very complex problem. But certainly, plant genetics is going to play an important part of a sustainable agricultural future. So consider everything we eat today has been genetically altered in some way. There's many different kinds of genetic modification. There's conventional genetic modification. There's more modern genetic engineering. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner, everything has been altered. And why do farmers do this? Why do they plant genetically altered improved seed? It's because in the seed has all the traits many of the traits that are important for farmers: high yield, nutrition, and resistance to pests and disease. And this shows you an example of an ancient corn that versus the modern hybrid corn that we eat today. And the difference here is about 100-fold change in yield. So clearly, new seed varieties are going to continue to be a critical component of sustainable agriculture. Now, the question comes up, is the food safe to eat? And we should consider that conventional methods of gene alteration are very similar to modern genetic methods of alteration. And in fact, many of the conventional methods produce many more genetic changes than, for example, genetic engineering. There's been about 2 billion acres of genetically engineered crops planted over the last 15 years, and there has not been a single instance of harm to human health or the environment. Now, I want to give you 4 examples of genetically engineered crops, and one thing I want to stress is that not all GMOs are alike. Every crop is different, the traits are different. Sometimes genetic improvement is going to be an important part of sustainable food system. It may be the most appropriate technology, sometimes not. It really depends on the particular system. Every new seed variety needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, whether it's genetically engineered or developed through conventional approaches. Now, the first example is papaya. This is an organic papaya from Hawaii, and you could see the very large spots on this papaya. This is caused by a severe virus called papaya ring spot virus, which is filling this papaya. Now, it's not going to hurt you if you eat it, but it has devastating consequences. So in the 1950s, this papaya invaded the island of Oahu and destroyed all the papaya orchards. There was no method to control the disease, so the farmers moved to another island. And however, about 40 years later, the virus invaded that island as well, and the farmers saw their production plummet. Now, there was a local Hawaiian who had anticipated this outbreak because, as we know, invasive species move around, pathogens move around as well. So what he did, this is Dennis Gonzalez. He's a USDA-supported scientist, and with a small grant from the USDA, he decided to investigate this new science of genetic engineering. And he took a snippet of a virus from a mild strain of the virus and introduced it into papaya. And the new papaya plant was completely immune to the disease. So this is similar to human vaccinations to smallpox or polio, although mechanistically it's slightly different. And he developed these new varieties. He distributed them freely to growers. This is all in the public domain. And you can see the incredible difference. So this is a field trial in 1995. In the center is the genetically engineered papaya. On the outside is the conventional papaya. And this is a natural field inoculation. The genetically engineered papaya yields 20-fold more than any other papaya. So today, 15, 16 years later, there's still no other method to control this disease. There's no conventional method, there's no organic method. So this is a nice example of an appropriate technology. And virtually all the papaya that we get here on the West Coast is genetically engineered. So about 90% of the papaya that we eat is genetically engineered. So this is a second example. This is a cotton bollworm emerging from its insect case. 25% of the world's insecticide is used to control this particular insect. In the United States, about half of the insecticides used are considered to be carcinogenic or toxic, or potentially carcinogenic, I should say. Now, there are alternative methods to control this bug, and one of them is a small protein called Bt that's been used by organic farmers for many years. So Monsanto took the gene encoding this protein and introduced it into cotton, and we now have over 15 years of peer-reviewed studies telling us, informing us how this system is working. So in Arizona, farmers of cotton that are growing Bt cotton are using half the amount of insecticides compared to their neighbors, and the farmers are seeing about twice as much insect biological diversity in the field as measured by ant and beetle number of ant and beetle species. And the reason this is simple. They're spraying fewer insecticides, so they're enhancing the production of the beneficial insects. This has been a very important product in other parts of the world. Other countries have also developed their own Bt crops. So, for example, Bt cotton is being very important in India. Indians are seeing very large reductions in insecticides, but also large increases in yield. And that's because many Indian farmers were not spraying insecticides in the first place, so they were losing their crops. In China, Bt cotton reduced the use of about 150 million pounds just within the first years of use. And this is about the same amount of pesticides that are used in California, to give you an amount of the dramatic reduction in insecticides. In China, Bt rice has also been planted, and scientists have noted a dramatic reduce in insecticide poisonings in those families. Now, we know also through many years of agriculture, plant breeding, entomology, plant pathology, that a farmer cannot rely on seed alone to solve all their problems. The seed must be integrated into an ecologically based farming system. For example, Bt controls one pest, but there are many different types of pests that infect these crops. So we continue to need to enhance the biological diversity in the fields and try integrate other pest control approaches. So I wanted to just finish with, to talk to you about rice. Rice is the staple food for half the world's population. And three-quarters of the world's poorest people make their living and grow their own food on very small plots of land, such as this. Now, I have been working on rice for about 20 years, and 15 years ago I began a collaborative project with a wonderful colleague, David McKill, and we were very interested in this issue, which is 25% of the world's rice is grown in flood-prone areas, and as I mentioned, most rice varieties will die after 3 days of flooding. 75 million people in this area live on less than $1 a day. For this reason, breeders had tried for many years to develop a submergence-tolerant rice. And this was based on the discovery of an ancient variety of rice in eastern India that had an incredible property. It could survive 2 weeks underwater. Breeders tried conventional approaches to bring this gene into varieties favored by farmers, but the farmers rejected the new varieties because when the conventional breeding brought in this gene, they also dragged in a bunch of other undesirable characteristics without it. So we thought we could try to isolate this gene and use a genetic engineering or precision breeding approach to develop a new rice variety. So we were successful isolating this gene using a modern genetic method called positional cloning. And Dave then introduced this gene through precision breeding into different rice varieties. And this is a video showing you the new variety on the left and the conventional variety on the right. So this was a time-lapse, 4-month time-lapse at the International Rice Research Institute. And you could see after the flood that the sub-1 variety, the submergence tolerance variety, thrives after the flood, whereas the conventional variety has much lower yield. Now, I really like this video because it shows the power of genetics, and the yellow shows you the grain there. Now, Dave took this a step further. So this is a field trial of his at the International Rice Research Institute, but he also spent 4 years working with breeders and growers in Bangladesh and India. Probably because of global climate change, there's been tremendous flooding every year. So every year of his field trial were the perfect situations for this test because there were floods. And we all went down there a few years ago and visited the farmers, and you can see the difference between the sub-1 variety of rice, which is on the right, and the conventional variety on the left. And farmers are seeing each of those years 3 to 5-fold increase in yields when there has been flooding. Last year, 1 million farmers grew submergence-tolerant rice. And finally, to finish, I want to talk about another important project. This is called Golden Rice. It's a humanitarian project funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, a nonprofit organization. And the issue here is that there are many places in the world, and especially developing countries, where children have micronutrient deficiencies. One of these most severe deficiencies is the lack of vitamin A. And when in some parts of the world, people are eating rice 3 times a day, and they do not have a diverse diet, and they're not getting enough vitamin A. The World Health Organization estimates that 500,000 children go blind every year because of vitamin A deficiency. Half of these children will die within a year of going blind. This is a very difficult problem, and we've tried for over 30 years many different approaches, important approaches, fortification of foods, helping farmers plant diverse diets, and also providing vitamin A capsules. Now, the researchers developed a variety of rice called golden rice, which is genetically engineered to produce provitamin A. And this is an image of the golden rice, and you could see where there's more golden color, there's more of this provitamin A. And this golden rice is predicted to be released next year. 1 cup a day of golden rice is expected to save the lives of hundreds of thousands of children. And so I urge you to pay attention to the release of this rice. So, and the beauty of this, whereas when you distribute vitamin A tablets, often it only reaches urban communities. It's hard to reach the rural poor where the farms are. And with golden rice, the vitamin is in the seed. So all the farmer needs to do is plant a single seed, and then they can harvest 500 seed from that, replant it, share it with their neighbors. So the International Agricultural Development community is very excited about this rice, and it's expected to be the release of the world's first crop plant that's fortified with vitamin fortified, so similar to the milk, vitamin D fortified milk that we all take for granted every day, right? Okay, so the main points I want to make is not all GMOs are alike. So every seed variety is going to be different. Everything needs to be looked at a case-by-case basis. And some of these projects are funded by corporations, so BT Cotton was funded by Monsanto, but many of the other projects, such as our rice project and the papaya project, were funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and you can also see the Rockefeller Foundation, which funded the Golden Rice Project. Now, we also have clear scientific data over 15 years published in highly qualified peer-reviewed publications that show there has not been a single instance of harm to human health or to the environment. And we have seen clear environmental benefits, massive reductions in insecticides, and soon we're predicted to see health benefits as well. So there is no scientific basis for ruling out genetically engineered crops. And I think this is an important point to consider in this age of media. And we can talk about that as well. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to say. I think seed is going to continue to be an essential part of sustainable agriculture for the future, and that seed needs to be integrated into an ecologically based agriculture. Thank you.